Hello everyone, Ceri the Crafter here, that's C-E-R-I the Crafter, and I'm here with a little helpful video aimed at the beginners who are using paper dolls, maybe for the first time. Now, I want to explain first of all what a paper doll is. A paper doll is one of these cut-out figures that normally Tim Holtz is known for them, but I do know there are now some other brands out there as well, and I know some people on Etsy have got them that you can fussy cut. So this is a paper doll. They can either be sitting down, they can be standing up, they can be small, medium, large. There's portrait ones, there's group ones, there's couples. There's a lot of them out there. And the trouble I'm finding with a lot of, well, not trouble, the thing that bothers me is people stick them onto tags, but they're just basically floating around. So I thought I just want to give you, say, 10 helpful hints or tips on how to ground a paper doll to a background. Now what I've done is I've made 10 backgrounds just out of manila folders, and I've just made 10 backgrounds that are all pretty similar in their look. I haven't overly decorated them because what I want to show you is how to actually put on a paper doll and make it look as if it's part of the coherent design. The tags I'm making are not finished tags. I mean, after I say I put him on there, I would then probably put a label or I put a number on or I do something else. But it's all about just doing this bit at the moment. So I've got 10 different ways to do it. So I'm going to work my way through them systematically. Hopefully give you hints and tips along the way. So the first one is whenever you've got someone, excuse me, whenever you've got someone in the paper dolls who sat down, you need to actually sit them on something. Now you could sit them onto a ticket or a coupon or something, but with this guy here, I think that the distance there is quite large. I tend to like using like bits of coffee dyed paper that are stamped, and I like to view them as if they're a packing case. So basically I would put him down and then I would sit him on it, and that would look a lot more natural than maybe putting a packing ticket or a raffle ticket this way on. So I'm going to do each of these as we go along. Now I have two different sizes because if the packing ticket or the number is too small, it just looks a bit weird, so I tend to go slightly longer. Now all these are just coffee dyed bits of paper, and I've gone in and I've stamped on them with some numbers. Now I do apologise, the sun is coming and going, but I'm in the process of packing to go to Chicago in a couple of days' time, so this needs to be done today. So I've got no option except to actually get it done. Now as I said, I'm not planning on doing finished tickets. I'm literally finished tickets, finished tags. I'm literally just sharing with you some of the hints and tips. So I'm going to come in, I'm just going to glue him down. I'm going to use Pritt stick on it or a glue stick because even though it's a little bit shiny, I know that the Pritt stick will hold it. You can actually use things like art glitter glue or Fabri-Tac or whichever you want. You could also go around and distress ink with a sponge around the edges if you chose. So he's in place. Now to me, even though he's on there, let me just get a damp cloth because I've got a bit of glue on his hat and I don't want the glue on his hat. There you go. So to me, even though he's now sat on something which gives him a reason to be there, I actually want to add a little more shadow as well. So I'm going to share with you another trick that really does help ground things. So all I've got is a ceramic tile here. This could be a piece of glass, could be a bit of plastic, could be a old plate, anything along those lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm using some distress ink by Tim Holtz. Other water-soluble inks will work equally as well. And I'm just going to get a little bit of water. I'm using a spritz bottle purely because it's just convenient for me to use a spritz bottle. I'm going to take just a paintbrush, mix that in with the ink, so I've got sort of a brown colour. This was Vintage Photo, and I'm going to come in. I'm just going to put a little bit of shading in here, just enough. It just gives it a reason for it to be there. So I'm going to put this by because I'm going to use that again later, and I can always reactivate that with a little bit of water. So see, just by putting that in there, I do wish the sun would go away. For once I'm saying the sun should go away. that little bit of shading just grounds that whole image. And then of course I'd go in and I put a label or a ticket, or I put an inscription or something. We'll look at them all at the end anyway, but that was number one, using a ticket. Okay, number two. Now this lady is standing, but if I stand anywhere on there, she's just floating. Another really easy one to do, and this is one I use a lot, is, let's put that over there, is I use washi tape. Now, I've got washi tape to go on here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to tear a strip of washi tape approximately the width of the area I want it in. Now, I don't tend to stick it down with both sharp edges. I'll come in and I will actually tear the washi tape so it's got an interesting bottom line to it. Let's just get that bit off my finger. So as you can see, we now have an interesting shape to this washi tape. And now, because I don't agree, of course I agree, because I don't trust washi tape, I'm over here, I've got a glue book, by the way, and I'm just putting some Pritt stick on it just to glue it down. Now, I know roughly what I want that lady to be. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to put the washi down. Now, one of the things that I find quite tricky is getting it parallel with the bottom edge when I'm actually looking through the camera. So if it's not 100% straight, please forgive me on that one. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with my little lady, and once again I'm going to use a Pritt stick on her just to glue her down. And there's something I want to point out here. So let's lift this up so you can see it. So this is the top, oh, something stuck to me, that's lovely. So this is the top line of the washi. I don't stand her above the top line. I stand her so that, let's stick it out in a second, so that her ankles are almost at the top line. That gives her the illusion that she's standing on a floor. If you stick her just above here, let's see if I can grab that little girl I had before. So if you stand someone up there, it's as if they're not connected. Whereas if you stand them on it, see what I mean? It gives more of an illusion. And of course, I could go in and add more to the back. So that's number two, and that's washi tape. Okay, another one that's really quick and easy to do. And in a few seconds, there's another one of the dolls I want to talk about. So we've got this little chappie here now. And we've got this now. I want to put him here, but I want to show you yet another way of doing something really quick and easy. So I'm going to turn this upside down. I'm going to take a post-it note, and I'm going to put a post-it note across there, hopefully parallel to the bottom line. Maybe not 100% parallel, but there you go. Now I'm going to take my blending tool, and I'm going to take a bit of distress ink. Could be any ink I want, and I'm just going to rub that along the bottom there. Now, it may not appear that you're doing a lot, but when you take that off, it's now put a floor surface for your little person to stand on. So let's take that out of the way. I may need that later. So now when I come in with this little guy, I can stand him on that floor surface. So once again, just using a little bit of the Pritt stick that I use, and down he goes. And again, I've got a bit of glue on the front side of him, which is totally unnecessary. So as you can see now, his feet are below that line, which again makes him look as if he's standing on the floor. It's as if that would be the edge of the floor line before it actually reaches the wall. So that's number, what number is that? That's number 3. That's just using a distress ink down the side. Now, there is obviously really, really simple one here. So in we come, this little patriotic lady is here, this little girl. So what I'm going to do is this time I'm just going to draw a line in. Now, I've got 2 colours here. I've got ivory black and I've got copper beech. These, it doesn't matter what pencils they are. I would say go for a more of a natural tone. I tend to veer away from black because black can be a bit too dramatic, but you might want to define an edge. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to take a ruler, and I'm just going to draw a line on here, and then I'm going to use the side of my pencil, and I'm just going to run a little bit of shading down there. Okay, now if you do want to define it, you can come back in with your black pencil after you've done that and give it a little bit of a defining line. But as I said, I sometimes find that defining line just a little too stark. Put in a slightly different place. There you go. Now, if you have water-activated brush pencils, you could come in and you could actually rub that with a damp paintbrush, and it would help blend that down. So we're just going to put this little lady in. Let's get the Pritt stick on the go again. So I'm hoping you're finding this is useful. As I said, this is aimed at the beginners out there, those who are just discovering the art of making ephemera and using paper dolls. It just really, I wish I'd have thought or known about this when I actually started, because I was just merrily sticking paper dolls on things and didn't realise they didn't really look that natural. The reason I'm using a damp cloth, by the way, is because it just cleans off any excess glue. So I think you're a little bit wonky, lady. There you go. So there you go. As I said, we'll take a look at all of these at the end anyway, but that will just give us some grounding to stand upon. So, number 4. Okay, number 4. We're going to do this with this young man here. I want to put him on here somewhere. I think maybe over there, because I'll do something with that later. Now, coffee dye paper or just paper packaging, like something comes in it when you go to the supermarket or the grocery store. I'm just going to use a bit of coffee dye paper here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into my floor surface. Now I do have a straight edge there. The question is, do I want this to come all the way from the edge? Maybe I do. Let's just tear this down just so I can place that on there. I think that's okay. With coffee dye paper, I do tend to go in with Vintage Photo Distress ink, and I do tend to actually just distress the edges. I like to do that because it gives it more of a natural feel. So once again, let's just get him glued up and stuck down. Now, this is by no means an exhausted list of what you can do. Well, if I haven't stuck the coffee dye paper down, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? Let's stick that down first. It isn't by any means an exhausted list of what you can do. This is just 10 helpful ways to actually ground the paper dolls that you may already have in your collection. So put that across there. He's already got glue on because I've just done that. Again, I'm going to sink his ankles down so he's just below that area. Do I want further? No, actually I do like him there, because I might put a label or wording underneath, or maybe a saying or something. So just give him a bit of a wipe. Just make sure I've got no glue on him. So there you go. He again is now grounded down. Now you could come in, as we did before, with that paintbrush of that ink, and you could come in and just give him a bit of a shadow around there. So just little touches like that will actually just make things look ever so slightly more natural. So just a bit of a shadow line. Don't get hung up on it has to be perfect. It doesn't. It's just giving the eye a reason to look and go, okay, he's stuck on there, that's fine. So that was coffee dyed paper. Now, the next one, let's bring you in. Ooh, bit of bright sunshine there. Excuse the bright sunshine. So let's put that out the way and that out the way. Let's have a little bit of a clean up for a second. So the next one I'm going to do is actually I'm going to use a texture stamp. Now, a texture stamp could be anything you choose. I mean, the ones I've just got, I've got honeycomb, I've got diamonds, I've got a bit of, that must be a Hessian type thing. This is like painterly lines. This is a scribbled line. This one's got lines. This has got little blocks underneath it. So anything like that. So I think, let's use this one. Okay, so I'm just going to come back in. Remember that bit of post-it note I had? I'm going to use that again. I'm going to come in across here, put a parallel line down to the bottom edge. Now, another thing I like to do here is I'm going to tear a piece of this off. I don't want this so that it's got a really blocky edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tear a bit of a line so it's got an edge to it. I'm just going to tuck that under there, just masking off that little bit of an area. So this gives you a straightish edge. I don't want a straightish edge. Now again, I'm going to use Distress ink because I want that colour. I'm going to put a bit of paper under there so I don't end up stamping my mat as well. Now you can do this with any texture stamp you choose. I would always say try and use something that's slightly in character with the bit you're using. Stamp that down, give it a few seconds to stick down. Okay, now when I take that off, I now have an area, wish that sun would go away. You have an area here where you can actually see where I can ground down the paper doll and he'd be positioned on there. So let's put the stamp away, let's stick him in place. Let's just stick this one down. Let's get Mr. Conductor on here. So I'm going to stand him where I put that. Now I do have to be slightly careful because if I put a damp cloth over this, of course, it's going to activate it. So I just want to make sure I've got the glue off there. As I said, we will take another look at all of these. Hopefully the sun won't be shining on me when I do show you all of these. But that's another way just to give it a bit of grounding there. So that's a texture stamp. Okay, next one. This one is so simple. This one is actually just use a label. So I'm going to take my little girl, I'm going to stick her there. I'm just going to come in. Now this is just a label I've made myself. You could use a digital label, you could use a label from packaging, you could just cut a rectangle out and stamp a word into it maybe. You could use a saying, you could use a phrase. There are some wonderful digitals, as most of you will know. I love Tracy Fox's labels from Love Junk Journals, so I would say there are more than enough in there. If you're looking for a digital, go on to Tracy Fox's Love Junk Journals in Etsy and you will find so many different labels. But again, don't, let's fine, lift this up, don't stand her on there, stand her down from it. So she's actually standing almost in the label, not on the label. Again, come with that cloth just to tidy up this. There you go. So again, she's sat down in there or stood down in there, loving that. Right, what's the next one? Number 8. Okay, number 8 is something that requires some Fabri-Tac, but we're going to use torn fabric for this. So I thought, okay, he looks like a man of industry. So we're going to pretend he's part of the fabric industry. So I've just got an offcut of some linen here. Can't remember exactly where I got it from. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a torn, a bit of a tear, because I don't actually want a straight edge. Let's just take the ends off this. Now there's going to be threads on it. It's fabric. I don't mind. That's okay. A little bit of a more there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my floor surface. Now this is a grungy looking piece, so I'm going to come in with a bit of the vintage photo again, and I'm just going to put this on. Now it can be, you could even use more coffee dyed fabric than this was just plain linen piece. I would say use a bit of coffee dyed fabric if you wish. That's equally as good. Now I'm going to use Fabri-Tac for obvious reasons because it's fabric I'm sticking down. So let's just get the Fabri-Tac on the go. Now I'm going to put Fabri-Tac on the back of this, but because I don't want it to soak through, I'm going to smear it with my finger, and that way it'll stick down, but it shouldn't ooze through to the front. So just pop that down on there. And also that coffee dye effect that we put on there with the distress ink, any patchiness will just be regarded as actually part of that and not necessarily part of ink coming through. So we're going to stick him down again. Now I'm using Pritt stick or a glue stick for this one purely because the majority of him is going to be stuck to the tag itself and not necessarily onto the fabric piece. So again, as you can see, I've got it so that his feet are just below the edge of this, and that's another way of sorting that one out. Okay, number 9, let's not forget about lace. So we've got this lovely lady here who's obviously a very elegant lady. So I'm going to take a piece of lace. Now the reason I like to use lace is because I can then have the lace go below the bottom edge. Let's just tidy that little bit off there. I know I'm probably going to trim this when it's in place. Let's put that strap by. Trying to find out which side is which. I think that's the right side. So I'm going to come in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to centralize that across there, and then I'm actually going to cut off the outer edges. I could wrap them round, but I don't really do that very often. So a little bit of fabric tack on there. I don't want too much so it goes oozing out all over the place. Again, I'm just going to use my finger to smear that down again. If you're a lady who's wearing nail polish, be really careful because fabric tack will take your nail polish off. So just going to tap that down, just going to lift that up so I can actually see whether it's even, which it is. Let that sit for a second or two. A little bit there, I just need to get underneath. There you go. Let's put the lid back on the fabric tack because otherwise I'll have the stuff all over the place. Now I'm going to pull out, I've got a little pair of Tim Holtz scissors here that are really, really sharp, so I know that I can cut or trim the edges of this off. Now as you can see, I haven't backed these cards. I've literally just made them out of file folder. So there you go. So that's, get that out of the way. Get my scissors out from under my fingers before I stab myself with them. So I'm now going to take my elegant lady. I'm going to put some Pritt stick or glue stick on the back of her. And place her down. Yes, I think I want her reasonably centralised because I might put some flower or a butterfly or something down the side of it. Now, I will not be decorating these on screen for you guys. This tutorial is basically, or this helpful hints is basically about grounding dolls. Is that sticking? It is sticking. So there you go. That's another way of actually just grounding your paper doll to give it somewhere to be. Now you could go in and do something below it, but to be honest with you, she hasn't got feet. She's only got the bottom hem of her dress. I'm not worried about that. So let's put that one to one side. And we're on to the very last one. Right, now I thought with this one, I'm going to choose something that may need a couple of different techniques on this one. So, and then stay around because I've got one more paper doll that sometimes confuses people, and I thought I probably need to address that one. So let's see, we're going to put this lovely elegant couple on here. Now he will need something to sit on, so I've got a ticket that he can sit on. That's fine, but if you look, he's sitting on something, but she is still floating in midair. So just be aware that I'm going to turn my ticket this way so that the bottom edge of the ticket is in bottom edge in line with her hemline. And I'm doing that on purpose because if this was actually a floor level, that and that were likely to be the same level. Whereas if this is down, then she looks like she's floating in midair. So I'm going to come in and stick this one down. This ticket is just from a book of tickets that is a Tim Holtz ticket set. So knowing it's roughly there, I'm going to pop that in there. Now before the glue completely seals up, I think I want to move that down just ever so fractionally. That's the joy of a glue stick. You can move stuff around. Okay, so his butt fits nicely on that top edge. So if I move it down just slightly, that means the bottom edge of her dress is in line with this. I'm going to now come in and stick them both down, and then we're going to do one more stage to this one just to make it look even more realistic, as if they've been really standing there, and there's no problem with that. So let's pop this in. Let's put him sat where he needs to be, making sure this is roughly in line with the bottom of there. A little bit of a damp cloth just to tidy off any glue I've got stuck on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with that technique I had before. Remember this, it's dried up now. Now this was just the Tim Holtz Distressing vintage photo. Just going to come in, a little bit of squirt of that. We'll just reactivate all of that because it's water active. And I'm going to come in and underneath her, I'm going to give a little bit of a shadow and underneath the bottom edge of the box. So what I've done is I've given it a reason for it to be there. Now, if you don't want to do this technique, you can take a slightly damp brush and just rub it on your ink pad itself, and that will give you a more intense version of it. I don't tend to do that too often because I'm then adding water to the bottom to my pad, and I don't really want to do that. So there you go, then they're nicely grounded. So before we go back through those, there's one more little person in this collection that I always look at and go, we really need to address that, we really need to look at that. So I've got a bit of Milliner card here, and this is the little girl in question. Now, let's lift this up so hopefully the sun's not totally on her. This is the little girl in question. Now, a lot of people think this girl is sat down waving her arms. Actually, she isn't. If I come in with a ruler, and I do that, immediately, guess what? She's sitting on a swing. So, for those of you who have always used this and don't realise, this odd shape here is obviously where the swing seat is. So, excuse my 101 drawing here, but if I was to put a piece of something there, and if I line that all back up again now, guess what? This little one is actually sat on a swing. So it's one of the ones I see used quite often, and people just think she's sitting down waving or holding a balloon or something. No, she's on a swing. So let's take a little bit of a look back through the ones we've done, and we'll go through them in the order that I created them. And hopefully this sun will go away in a few seconds. And when it does, I will do the flick through so you get a really close look at things. So here I am back again. There's a big grey cloud come over in front of the sun, which worries me for my washing, but it means I can actually compensate for some of the light variances you went through, and I do apologise. Try to do the best I can with natural lighting. So the first helpful hint was I stamped a number and used it as almost like a packing crate, and used some vintage photo distress ink with some water just to give a shadow line there. Number 2 was torn washi, so I tore a strip of washi and stood her so that her feet are below the straight line, which makes her look like she is actually standing on the floor, not hovering above it. This little guy, I actually used blending ink. I put a post-it note, used my blending sponge, and just did some vintage photo at the bottom of that one, just to give him somewhere to stand. The next one was just a drawn line. I just got a coloured pencil, drew a line, rested the pencil on its side and shaded it down. That gave me that image. Now this gentleman actually has a bit of torn coffee dyed paper. You could use any paper you wished for this. I also put a little bit of extra ink in there with a damp brush just to give it a little more shading in there. This one I used a texture stamp for. I put a post-it note there and tore a bit of paper there and stamped. It can be any texture stamp, and that sat on there. Then with this little one, I actually used a label. It could be any label, one you make yourself, one you buy, one digital, anything. I put that in there and just sat her. And remember, I'm standing her in the label, not on the label, to give it a bit more of a realistic look. This gentleman had a strip of coffee dyed of linen, and I just rubbed it to give it a coffee dyed effect. Another way of putting a border for them to stand on. When it comes to elegant ladies, I like to put lace on the bottom of them, and that gives her somewhere to stand as well. And then the final one, which is I think probably had the hardest one seeing when I was doing it, it is I put a ticket here, but I've had it as if he sat on it, but the bottom edge of the ticket almost lines up with the bottom edge of her dress, because otherwise she'll seem to be floating in the air. So it's another one of those things. And I came in with a bit of that vintage photo distressing with a bit of water and put that in there. So hopefully you found those helpful. As I said, I've aimed this one at the beginners because I know when you first start using vintage Tim Holtz paper dolls, sometimes you just stick them on, they look like they're floating in midair, and I really want to put something out there to hopefully help you ground your images. Now, as I said, I'm really sorry, but I work in natural daylight, and today has been one of those flick the sun on, flick the sun off days. So hopefully the lighting wasn't too bad. Hopefully you've had a good look there. And I hope you found that useful. So that's just my 10 helpful hints as far as grounding Tim Holtz paper dolls. I'm Ceri the Crafter, that's Ceri the Crafter. Until next time, bye-bye now.